You say LeBron, blah, 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 blah. So we're going to take an 8-year stretch. We're going to take Giannis's last 8 years in Milwaukee. We'll take Nikola Jokic's last 8 years in Denver. All of them won one championship. LeBron's a failure, so then so is Jokic and so is Giannis.
What are you?
An idiot sandwich.
Finals MVP, all three won Finals MVP. If LeBron's a failure, so is Jokic, so is Giannis.
As the Lakers will win Game 6.
See, nobody cares.
When it comes to the average LeBron James supporter online or in the media, one pattern seems to come up again and again, lowering the bar and moving the goalposts whenever his career is being discussed. Nowhere was that more noticeable than during LeBron's run with the Lakers from 2019 through 2026. Looking back at that entire stretch, if you're being extremely generous, you could argue that LeBron James simply broke even. It was basically a wash. There were definitely some successful moments, but there were also plenty of disappointing ones. If you're evaluating it from a more objective standpoint, it's difficult to call LeBron's Lakers tenure an outright success. In many ways, it ended up being far more underwhelming than many expected. Yes, he won one NBA championship, but it's also fair to acknowledge the circumstances surrounding that title. It came during the NBA bubble, with no Lakers fans in attendance and no true home court advantage for any team. On top of that, the Lakers missed the playoffs not once, but twice during his time there. They were also eliminated in the first round 3 different times, and on 2 occasions, they were knocked out in convincing fashion, without putting up much of a fight.
Sweet. He said it's sweet.
That stretch alone makes his overall resume look pretty inconsistent. Yes, the championship is clearly the biggest achievement and the main thing that strengthens his case. But outside of that, there were plenty of disappointing seasons, missed opportunities, and frustrating playoff exits. If LeBron had put together that exact resume with a franchise like the Orlando Magic, Indiana Pacers, or Sacramento Kings, people would probably celebrate it as an incredible accomplishment and be talking about building him a statue. But when you're playing for the Lakers, the expectations and standards are completely different. By that measure, the results come across as fairly underwhelming. Now, for the average LeBron James fan, even saying that sounds like complete blasphemy. They simply can't accept that perspective or understand why someone would see it that way. For example, take a look at what Shannon Sharpe had to say.
His last 8 years in Milwaukee. We'll take Nikola Jokic's last 8 years in Denver. All of them won one championship.
It's not the same.
Finals MVP, all three won Finals MVP. If LeBron's a failure, so is Jokic, so is Giannis.
He's an idiot. Don't listen to this. He's an idiot. All right, that's what we got to say about that.
So let's pause it right there. Looking at Shannon Sharpe's argument, the comparison comes across as pretty misleading. He's grouping together the tenures of Giannis Antetokounmpo, Nikola Jokic, and LeBron James. Yes, if you simply look at the surface level, 8 years and one championship for each player might seem like a fair comparison. But once you dig a little deeper and actually look at the context, that comparison starts to fall apart very quickly. First of all, you have to consider expectations and standards. The Lakers are one of the premier franchises in professional sports, and unquestionably the biggest brand in basketball. The Nuggets and Bucks are respected NBA franchises, but they're simply not held to the same standard as the Lakers. Take Milwaukee, for example. During Giannis's era, the Bucks have won one championship and reached 2 NBA Finals. But when did that championship drought begin? Their previous title came all the way back in 1971. That's a gap of roughly 50 years between championships. For Lakers fans, that's almost impossible to imagine because their franchise has historically won titles on a much more regular basis, averaging a championship about every 5.5 years. Now look at Denver. Before Nikola Jokic arrived, the Nuggets had never reached the NBA Finals. In 2023, he ended that streak and led the franchise to its very first NBA championship.
So when you compare the Bucks and Nuggets, you're talking about organizations that combined for just 2 championships before their recent success. Meanwhile, the Lakers had already won 16 titles before LeBron James ever put on the uniform. That's the key point. The Lakers were already one of the greatest franchises in NBA history without LeBron. The Nuggets, before Jokic, had never even made the finals. The Bucks had won 1 championship decades earlier, but for much of the 21st century, they weren't viewed as one of the league's marquee franchises. To put it into perspective, Nikola Jokic is responsible for 100% of Denver's NBA Finals appearances and 100% of its championships. Giannis has been part of half of Milwaukee's championships and both of its modern Finals appearances. LeBron, meanwhile, accounts for a much smaller percentage of the Lakers' overall history, contributing 1 championship to a franchise that already had 16 before he arrived. That context matters, because for the Lakers, winning championships has long been the expectation. They're known as one of the league's historic championship franchises. Denver and Milwaukee, before Jokic and Giannis, simply didn't carry that same legacy or level of expectation.
The failure, so is Jokic, so is Giannis. Now, but think about what we're doing here. We're taking LeBron year 16 to year 8, 24. You're taking those guys in their prime.
So, stopping it right there for a second, this is where Shannon Sharpe's argument starts to lose credibility. Suggesting that LeBron James' post-prime Lakers run was just as successful as what Giannis Antetokounmpo and Nikola Jokic have accomplished doesn't really hold up under closer scrutiny. After the 2020 season, LeBron was no longer widely viewed as a top 3 player in the league. Even in 2020, there was legitimate debate over whether he or Anthony Davis was the Lakers' best player throughout that championship run. Now, when people shift the discussion to individual accomplishments and awards, one point that's brought up repeatedly is LeBron's All-NBA selections. But if you take a closer look at some of those honors, there are years that deserve additional context. Take 2019, for example. LeBron earned 3rd-team All-NBA despite playing just 55 games, while the Lakers missed the playoffs in his first season with the franchise. It's a year many of his supporters rarely bring up. Then, in 2021, he was named 2nd-team All-NBA after appearing in only 45 games. In 2022, he made 3rd team while playing 56 games. Then, in 2023, he played fewer than 60 games and still earned another 3rd-team selection. Looking across those accolades, some critics argue that LeBron's reputation played a role in those honors. Meanwhile, players like Giannis and Jokic have often had to earn every bit of recognition through their production, with some believing they haven't always received the same level of media support. Even with LeBron's All-NBA selections and All-Star appearances during his Lakers years, his resume still falls short when compared to what Giannis and Jokic accomplished over similar stretches. Look at Giannis's resume. 2 MVP awards, won in back-to-back seasons, a Defensive Player of the Year award in the same season as one of those MVPs, 7 first-team All-NBA selections, multiple All-Defensive First-Team honors, and 7 straight seasons finishing in the top 4 of MVP voting. For nearly a decade, Giannis was consistently viewed as one of the league's elite players, and at his peak, many considered him the best player in basketball. Then there's Nikola Jokic, whose 8-year run has been equally remarkable. He has won 3 MVP awards, including back-to-back MVPs, finished near the top of MVP voting year after year, earned multiple first-team All-NBA selections, and became the first player in NBA history to lead the league in points, rebounds, and assists during a single postseason championship run. One more point worth mentioning is the difference in teammates and the markets these players represent. Denver and Milwaukee have never been major destinations for superstar free agents. Denver has historically struggled to attract marquee talent, while Milwaukee has often been remembered for seeing stars leave, including Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Ray Allen, and now Giannis becoming the subject of constant speculation. The Lakers, on the other hand, have always been one of the NBA's premier destinations. Elite players have consistently wanted to wear the purple and gold. Looking at supporting casts, Jokic's best teammate has been Jamal Murray, a talented player and a one-time All-Star. Giannis's top teammate has been Chris Middleton, who has built an outstanding career of his own.
Both are excellent players, but many would argue they don't compare to teammates like Anthony Davis or Luka Doncic in terms of star power. That's another important piece of context. The Denver and Milwaukee markets are significantly smaller than Los Angeles and naturally attract far fewer superstar players. Speaking of superstars, if you look through the list of the greatest players in NBA history, the Lakers dominate those conversations. So what's the point? Within Lakers history, LeBron's era is only one chapter in a franchise filled with legendary ones. His 2020 championship is certainly part of that history, but it's added to an organization that had already built one of the greatest legacies in professional sports. For the Nuggets, Jokic is unquestionably the defining player in franchise history. Their story begins with him. For the Bucks, Giannis stands alongside Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as one of the two defining figures in franchise history. The Lakers' history, meanwhile, includes names like Wilt Chamberlain, Magic Johnson, Jerry West, James Worthy, Shaquille O'Neal, and many other Hall of Famers before LeBron's chapter is even discussed. So what does that ultimately mean? If you compare the 2021 Bucks championship, the 2023 Nuggets championship, and the 2020 Lakers championship, which ones are likely to be remembered most deeply by each franchise's fan base 25 years from now? The argument is that Milwaukee's and Denver's titles carry unique significance because championships are incredibly rare for those organizations. The Lakers, by contrast, have a long tradition of winning titles. Because of that, some believe Jokic's and Giannis's championships hold greater historical weight within their respective franchises than LeBron's title does in Los Angeles. So that's where the discussion ends. One final thought. If you're being as generous as possible when evaluating LeBron's Lakers tenure, you could argue that it ultimately balanced out. One championship in 8 seasons, with the 2020 bubble title serving as the defining achievement, but also several disappointing finishes along the way. Winning a championship in a smaller market like Milwaukee or Denver arguably carries a different level of significance for those franchises. When you compare the individual awards, sustained excellence, and historical impact of those 8-year stretches, the argument is that they're simply not viewed the same way. As always, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.